Are you a thoughtful leader? Maybe you are. Maybe you think you are. Let's find out. I'm Mindy Gibbins-Klein. I'm author of The Thoughtful Leader and host of the Thoughtful Leader podcast. Thoughtful leadership is all about thought leadership that goes above and beyond. Thought leadership that is truly new and original, exciting, disruptive, maybe even groundbreaking. Because let's face it, we need to raise the bar. My guests and I are absolutely obsessed with finding truly original thought leadership, and I'm going to bring you so many exciting ideas and opportunities, things for you to think about, and chances for you to push your thinking that you'll be very glad you tuned in. So thanks so much for checking out Thoughtful Leadership and the Thoughtful Leader podcast. I look forward to connecting with you very, very soon. Welcome to the show. My guest today is the amazing thoughtful leader, Vix Munro. Vix, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. And you are a real expert in your field, and we've worked together on a book, and I really look forward to hearing your best insights about money. And I think everybody needs to know more about money. So let's start with that. What are your thoughts and beliefs around money?
Well, I'd say that my first belief or thought is that money makes the world go round. You know, no matter how much we don't want that to be true, it is actually true. And if we think about, a lot of the time people are kind of want or seem to be wanting more money. But in actual fact, it's not more money they want. They want to be able to start a business. They want to be able to pay their bills. They want to be able to save for a holiday. They want to prioritize their health and well-being. And it's money that enables all these things. And money also loves to have a purpose. So, I do think, the first thing about money is that money does make the world go round, whether we like it or not.
Well, we like it. We like it. Trust me. So I'm sure the listeners are already thinking, what is that accent? It's in the show notes and the bio, guys. But in case you didn't see it, Vix, tell us about your background and how you came to be where you are, literally and metaphorically.
Okay, yes. So the accent is a New Zealand accent, although I am told that, by my family, that I don't sound English and I don't sound New Zealand. And my sister says I sound international, which actually I quite like. But yes, I have a New Zealand accent. I was born and raised in New Zealand, and I came to the UK when I was 23 and I arrived with 30 pounds in my pocket. I'd been backpacking around Southeast Asia. I didn't expect or didn't plan to arrive with only 30 pounds. I ended up taking some internal flights, spending more money than I should have in Southeast Asia. And so when I got to the country, I had 30 pounds. Luckily, we had someone's floor to sleep on. And at the time, which is over 30 years ago now, was £6 for a 1 and 2 zone London travel card on the Underground. So I immediately spent £6 of that on a travel card. But I was lucky. I had an accountancy background. I managed to get a job in the city pretty quickly. There was a lot of work back in those days. So that was okay. And since then, I've been living in the UK, except for 1 year when I lived in Spain, because I went back to university and did a degree in economics and European studies, which included a language. So I got to live in Spain. So at the time, I spoke quite good Spanish. It's definitely not that good now. And since then, since been in the UK, I've kind of worked corporate jobs in either accountancy or economics, because I did a master's in economics, which with a focus on health. So I've worked a lot in the corporate world. I have my own business providing services to corporates. But now I also have a relatively new business, which is effectively all things money. So I'm working as a wealth coach for women to help them create and grow wealth.
That's fantastic. And I'm sure a lot of people are fascinated and interested and will reach out to you. So this is one of the great things about this podcast. We aim to get people from different backgrounds, lots and lots of different topics. Everyone has their expertise, their experience, their story, and they tend to be nice, thoughtful people. So now we'll speak about that word thoughtful. It comes up at least once in every episode. So how would you say you are thoughtful, Vix?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's a great word, and I often think it has a bit of a parallel with the word conscious, thoughtful, and I use the word conscious a lot. I talk about conscious money, conscious thoughts, and I think there's a big similarity, kind of overlap between the two. And when I'm referring to conscious money, or in particular, I talk about conscious spending, it's about the fact that you're aware of what you're doing. It's about self-awareness, thinking things through. And I think money in particular has a lot of emotions attached to it. And it's kind of, working outside those emotions, because a lot of us, particularly women, are emotional spenders. We go into a shop and we see something we like and we think, oh, I'll have that. And then you get it home and you never wear it, or you don't use it, or depending on what it is. And I always talk about we need to spend consciously. And by that, I mean, if it's not a need, obviously, if it's a need, you need it. If it's not a need, if it's a want, then ask yourself in a Marie Kondo kind of way, how much joy is this going to bring me? And if it's not a really high score, if it's not like 9 or 10 on a scale of 1 to 10, then why are you buying it? And it's a way to think about how you spend money, really, because the issue is that none of us, or most of us, I don't want to say none, most of us aren't putting away enough money for the future. Most of us spending too much money on our current selves rather than our future self. And it's just a way to think about money and about where that money should be directed. Should it be directed on myself or on you now, or should it be directed on myself or yourself in the future?
Right. And being conscious and, really thinking about your money, where it's going, I can see how that would help. And it's probably not either or, spending now and the future. You can't just put away for the future and live like a monk. So I'm sure that's not what you're talking about. Speaking about being conscious, I didn't realize my green screen is still green. And I think what I'm going to do, this is going to be really fun for everybody. I'm going to change the background. I thought I can just stick with the green
Oh,
screen.
wow.
Well, yeah, it's a big, long story, but I only have one background. So we're going to go with this one now. And I'm going to have to fix all my backgrounds, but I really wanted to do this recording with you. So everybody knows we record episodes in advance and you need to kind of be on it. So we're going to keep going. And that's what a thoughtful leader does, just thinks quickly. I'm not going to spend an hour thinking, should we start again? And so we're going to continue. And I hopefully have a new background. So Vix Munro, this is a real treat to have you here. People probably know what you're saying, or they've heard it before, but they're not doing it. So what do you think stops people doing what they know they should do? You can talk about wealth building or saving or investing, or you can just talk about life. But what do you think stops people doing what they really know they should be doing?
I think mindset, our mind, and negative thoughts, kind of negative chatter in our head, all those types of things, particularly in money. I mean, money mindset is a big thing. One of the things I talk about a lot is that if you think about money, there's the emotional side to it and the practical side to it. So the money mindset and the money management. And actually you need both. And it's where you have both a strong money mindset and good money management, that is where the magic happens. So I think it's things, it's our money story, or our money mindset. It's all those subconscious beliefs we hold about money, from our childhood. And there's so many different things, if, for example, you grew up in a house where there wasn't a lot of money, and you didn't have very much, as an adult, you might be thinking, well, I didn't have much. I need to look after myself now, give myself a good time. It's how I feel like I'm nurturing myself. So you just might spend all your money. And even though in your mind and in your head, that you should be putting away money for the future, it becomes very difficult for you to do that. So it's all those emotions, that are attached with money, really.
So that last example, is that a personal example? I seem to recall you talking about some errors in judgment. Here on the show, we say mistakes or errors in judgment because, that's in the past. But can you tell the listeners a little bit about how you got these insights? Because I think I heard something that I recognized in that story.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I certainly was a child. I mean, my parents were very frugal. we weren't poor, but we certainly were not rich. I mean, there was enough money for food and basic clothing, but, everything was basic and everything was frugal. I remember one of the things I remember the most is my bicycle. I really wanted a Raleigh 20. That was the bicycle when I was a kid that everyone wanted. And my dad just got this really cheap one and repaired it and he painted it. And I hated that bicycle, but I had to ride it to school because that was my only transport to school. Otherwise, I had to walk and it would take a long time. And, that was repeated a lot of my life. And I definitely went into a bit of a spiral in my, as soon as I got money, really. To be honest, even as a child, when I got paid pocket money or Christmas money, I would just spend it immediately on things for myself. Whereas one of my sisters, despite, growing up in the same childhood, she reacted differently to that. She was very much into putting it away and not spending it. So we all have a personal reaction to things. And just because we grew up in the same environment doesn't mean we're going to react the same. And then I ended up in a situation, when I was spending more than I was earning, had debts and, had to kind of pull myself together and start looking at what had happened.
Well, that's the money. Well, that's both mindset and management. But a lot of people don't have the skill to do the management. So they are not trained as accountants. They don't really understand economics. They don't really think about it. So being conscious is one thing, but knowing how to fix a spiral, as you called it, or fix an issue, that's another. So if you think about the majority of people who listen to this show, entrepreneurs, business leaders, they have work, they have jobs, they have professions, they have money coming in, but what we don't know are their spending habits. And that's what I think you're talking about. Do you have any advice for people in a general sense? You and I, we don't know their situation, but do you have some tips that you would be willing to share with everybody?
Yeah, well, you raise a really good point because we're not taught this in schools. Personal finance is not taught in school. So we kind of let out into the big world without these skills. So anything we pick up is from our childhood, really. And often our parents don't have the skills either to teach us. So first of all, I think there's a real big gap there. And what we're talking about really is financial literacy. And I do think that should be something that should be taught in school, and that's another issue. But there's a lot of books now about financial literacy or about how to become financially savvy with money. And there's a few areas that it relates to. One of the big ones is spending money, and how to budget or have a conscious spending plan. I personally have a conscious spending plan rather than a budget, and it's my preference. I find a budget a bit too strict. So I have a conscious spending plan, which kind of has buckets for money. And then, I spend to that. So I think it's about taking time to educate yourself because after all, knowledge is power and it's not rocket science. And I think the other thing is people think, oh, it's numbers and it's a bit like maths and it's scary and I don't want to have to deal with it. But it's actually not that complicated once you get into it. If you start by reading a few books or listen to some podcasts or do some online courses, it's amazing how quickly you can start to educate yourself. So, yeah, that's the first thing I would say is knowledge is power. Look at how you can educate yourself in this area. Because the other thing is that I always say as well is that, a lot of people will go and get help. They'll get a financial advisor or someone to tell them what to do. But at the end of the day, no one knows what you want more than you. And the way we spend our money should be aligned to our values, our goals, all those kind of things. And you can go to a financial advisor and say, these are my goals and these are my values. But no one really understands that better than you because things aren't always, that clear. There's a lot of gray areas.
As you were saying that, I was wondering, do people even know what they want? Because we're conditioned by society. I speak about this a lot. And one of the things that really gets to me is the fact that there's this whole aspirational, this way of living and keeping up with the Joneses. And, people get into debt buying things they don't really need or want to impress people they don't even like. I'm sure you've seen that on social media. Really, it's so true. So what do we do about that? Because I especially want to help the next generation, our young people, to understand. And I know you work mostly with women, and it's mostly women who are bringing up the next generation. Not only, we don't like to generalize here, but what would you say we should do about all these pressures and social media and this, thought that you have to be like, X or Y celebrity.
Yeah, I mean, you raise a really good point, and it's interesting, this thing about keeping up with the Joneses, isn't it? I always say, forget about the Joneses, they're broke. Because the thing is, quite often we see people or families, and they live in these nice big houses, and they drive nice cars, and they wear nice clothes, and they go on lovely exotic holidays. But the reality is, a lot of the time, not always, but a lot of the time, these people, they have big mortgages on their houses, which they may struggle to pay. They have car loans to buy this car. They have an ongoing outstanding balance on their credit card. I mean, so then they may be having a lot of anxiety about all the bills they have to pay. Sure, from the, outside looking in, it looks all wonderful and exciting, but that's often not the reality. So I think the first thing is to actually understand that things often aren't what they seem. There's a lot of kind of memes, aren't they, of, a carrot growing underground and the bit above the ground is big. I posted something like this the other day, and it's got a tiny little carrot underneath, but the one with a little bit above the ground has a nice big carrot underground. So things aren't often what they seem. So I think the more that we educate ourselves and actually understand these kind of things, the more we can kind of abide by them. Because once you start educating yourself and you start hearing things about, for example, the level of consumer debt in this country, the level of consumer debt is really high. So if we exclude mortgage debt from that, so exclude kind of the debt that people own for their homes, what are people using consumer debt for? A lot of it's car loans or overdrafts or credit cards. And it's just for generally, apart from maybe the car purchase, and cars depreciate in value relatively quickly, is for general living. So you're borrowing money to live now, and then in the future, you're going to have to work to pay for your previous life. So it's kind of understanding how that works.
Wow. I wonder if you are a fan of Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, and do you believe, Vix, here's the question of the day, do you believe that no one should live beyond their means?
In terms of living costs? Yes.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're saying I think what you're saying is if they're in debt, then they're spending more than they're earning. Well, I'm reading into.
Well, yeah, I mean, Robert Kiyosaki talks a lot about, investing in real estate and using leverage, so getting mortgages to do that kind of thing. And I think you need to be very aware of what you're doing to do what he does. I mean, and to be honest, I mean, I read his book when it first came out. I think it came out 96 or something like that. And I bought my first investment property in 1999. So I was very highly influenced by his book, and I really got into property in a big way at that time. And it's later, was in property really for 10 years. And then I started thinking, actually, all my eggs are in one basket. I want to diversify a bit. But yeah, I definitely believe that people should live within their means, because if you can't live within your means, then at some point in the future, you're going to, not only have to, make money that's going to pay for your current life, you're going to have to make money that's going to have to pay for your past life as well. So I do believe that that's kind of quite a key personal finance concept.
Yeah. And if you don't want to call it a budget, then call it a conscious, what did you call it?
Plan.
Conscious spending plan, but have some kind of awareness and have some kind of a plan to really aim to live within your means. Now, we're not telling people that they can't buy any clothes or any cars or, have a nice meal out every now and then. That's the thing. That goes back to what you were saying about, I have money. I deserve it. I really want to treat myself, when you haven't had. And that's, I'm going to step on thin ice here and say that's what happens with a lot of celebrities when they make it big and they start buying the $4,000 handbag and more and have, $100,000 dinners that you read about and all. Yeah. Like those of us who are normal people, we look at that kind of thing. We think, wow, you're spending all that money. Of course, we don't know if they're giving to charity, putting money away in savings. I do worry, though. I worry when people are not conscious. So that's a really good point. Conscious spending, which is, I think, what your work is all about. Now, with the time we have left, I wonder where you think things are going generally with society. So we've spoken about individuals having a conscious spending plan and being aware. We've spoken about the drivers, the mindset, learning to have the right mindset, getting knowledge, knowing how to manage your spending, but also your planning. Where do you think we're going as a society, or let's say the world, because you're a world expert, aren't you, Vix? Now's your chance to talk about the future. And this is what thoughtful leaders do. Just think about how you think that things are unfolding and let us know.
Oh, this is a really big topic. So I think, as a society, well, I mean, you talk about money, I mean, it brings up lots of things. I mean, there's lots of different areas here, lots of different forks. So one of the things is, are we going to have a cashless society? And to be honest, at the moment, I think globally, only around 10% of our currency is actual physical money. Most of it is actually electronic because, if I owe you some money, I'm probably not going to meet you in person and hand that money to you in cash. I'm going to send it electronically from my bank to your bank. And then on top of that, so one is a cashless society. There's lots of things in the money space happening. And the other one is cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. We've just seen that Bitcoin was made legal tender in El Salvador. So that's the first country it's made legal tender. But I think generally in terms of, and then there's, the economy, what's happening in the economy. And I think we're living in difficult times, not so much difficult times, uncertain times. I mean, at the moment, we have very, very low interest rates. So historically low interest rates. So for people buying houses, in many ways, it's easier than it's ever been before because the interest rates are low. But in other ways, it's harder than it's ever been before because prices are so high. And we don't know if that's going to continue. And we're seeing inflation coming as well. But in terms of the personal finance space, I think, as I said, I think there's two parts to it, the emotional side and the practical side. And in the last 10 years, I think mindset has been a bit of a buzzword. So I think there's an increasing focus on mindset, particularly in the entrepreneurial space. I see a lot of people doing mindset work, including money mindset work. So I think that's becoming a much bigger thing. It's trending, if you want to use, that kind of jargon. And I think we are seeing more people wanting to take responsibility for their finances. But I think the really key thing in the personal finance space, which I really want to mention, is the realization or the slow realization, because maybe it's not happening fast enough, that we need to take responsibility for our retirement. In the past, it was that the governments would, you'd get a state or a government pension, it would be enough to live on. I mean, it's not, can we even count on it? I mean, I was talking about that and I wrote a post about that the other day, basically saying, go onto the government website and see if you're on track to get a full state pension. And at the moment, it's £175.20 a week here in the UK. I don't know what it is in other countries, and I don't know how many people could live on that. But the other thing is that governments can't afford to pay it in the future. So we can't rely on that. And I think that's a really big thing, that we won't be able to rely on money from the government in the future. So if we're not putting away money now for the future, we risk spending our golden years in poverty. And I think that's a really big thing about society in the future.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for ending on such a high, Vix. This is a show where, there's no limit to what we might scare you with.
No, but I think it's about actually saying, I'm going to do something about it. It's about inspiring people to say, okay, I can't rely on the government. I'm inspired now to do something about it.
Right. Good. Well, I'm inspired to look up everything that you've ever written on social media and your articles. And I'm inspiring others to seek you out because you've got this wealth of information. See what I did there? And we really, really appreciate your time on the Thoughtful Leader podcast, and I'm sure we'll be speaking again. Take care. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Thoughtful Leader, and I hope it's inspired you to be more thoughtful as a leader in your business. Please consider subscribing and leaving a review. An important question for you. Do you want to create a culture of thought leadership in your organization? My best-selling book, The Thoughtful Leader, is available now on Amazon and many other sites in paperback, ebook, and audiobook formats. Please visit www.mindygk.com for more great content. That's www.mindygk.com. Speak to you again soon.